This week, a little something different. I'm going to do something a little off the beaten path, if you will. And certainly very, very different from traditional marketing and data science and quantitative things. I want to talk a bit about the Lunar New Year, sometimes called the Chinese New Year, although it's the lunar calendar is, at least as associated with the Chinese, is actually shared by almost every Far East Asian culture. Korea has it, Japan has it, Vietnam, a bunch of East and Southeast Asian countries all observe the lunar calendar. This year, as I'm sure you've seen in the news, is called the Year of the Rat or the Year of the Mouse. And there's some interesting cultural significance to this. Now, I want to preface this by saying that while historically and culturally all of these astrological things are good fun, there is, to my knowledge, no actual basis in science for any of this. So take it with a grain of salt and use it as a means of, spurring new ideas. But please don't rely on it as though it were actual fact. So not only is this the year of the rat, but in this zodiac cycle, the Chinese zodiac cycle, there's 12 animals, and they represent different attributes, different characteristics. Now, it's most relevant to people who are actually born in that year. Someone who is born in the year of the rat, if you will, may have those characteristics of that animal, both good and bad. But there's also two other cycles that are part of this as well. Every other year you have this yin-yo, or in Chinese, yin-yang, rotation of energy. Sometimes the literal words mean sunny or sun or moon or dark or bright. And this year is one of those bright or sun years where energy is more expansive, energy is more outgoing. Other years, the yin years, are when energy is more withdrawn, where it is more quiet, more introspective. So this is sort of an outgoing energy. So there's that. So there's this 12-year zodiac cycle of the animals. There's the alternating energy, the bright or the dark. And then there are 5 elements that go with this. The elements are fire, water, wood, metal, and earth. I think yes. And each of these elemental metaphors are part of a cycle of elements. So actually, let's bring up, first of all, this is here's the year that we're facing, the bright metal rat year. And what does that mean? Well, we talked about the brightness, the outgoing energy. We talked about a little bit about the rat. The rat is, or the mouse in East Asian culture, is symbolic of prosperity, of thrift, of resourcefulness, cleverness, efficiency, persistence, but it's also known for sort of cowardice or being unwilling to confront enemies. And if you think about the way a real mouse or real rat behaves, they're persistent. You can't kill them, right? If you've ever been to any major city, there's mice and rats running around everywhere. They are kind of messy, and they scurry away. They hide from trouble. So the energy of a rat year or a mouse year is one of thrift and prosperity and industriousness, but also one where you're kind of shying away from confrontation, where you're maybe not willing to make those big, bold moves. Which is interesting because this whole these 5 elements actually kind of contradicts that. So let's talk through these elements, because they're kind of really interesting strategies for thinking about how energy works. And again, this is not based in what you would consider quantitative science. So just keep that in mind. So at the top, we have fire, the fire element. Fire, of course, is a big consuming energy. You use it to heat things, but you can also burn things down. The blue arrows represent what that element gives rise to. So fire burns, and the ashes left behind creates earth, right? This idea of earth or dirt, that solid element, that fortifying element that you make your fort out of it or whatever. Earth gives rise to metal, right? So earth energy gives rise to metal. Metal is a very piercing energy. very sharp energy. Think of an axe. It also means, depending on whether you're talking about Chinese or Japanese characters, because they're the same written characters, but they can have different interpretations. It can also mean money or gold. So you can interpret that character a bunch of different ways, which gives rise to water, which then in turn gives rise to wood. And wood, of course, gives rise to fire, and the cycle of creation goes around those blue arrows. The cycle of destruction is fire ruins metal, right? Stick an untempered piece of metal in the fire, it's going to get ruined. Metal destroys wood, right? Axes chop down trees. Wood destroys earth. Trees grow out of the earth, breaking up the earth. Earth destroys water, dams blocking water, and water, of course, puts out fire. So what does all this have to do with this year? Well, if we think back to that bright metal rat, that metal energy is sort of hard, tough, sharp energy that can be used to cut things down, or it can be used to be decisive. And it's interesting when you think about what breaks metal, fire, right? And what metal breaks, wood. Again, if you think about these things as more metaphorical strategies rather than the literal elements, fire, that sort of big, expansive, outgoing energy, can break metal. And so that goes really well with this idea of this rat sort of scurrying away from confrontation, right? Get somebody who's big and boisterous, that might not be good for you. That might not be good for a situation where you're trying to avoid confrontation. Likewise, if you have someone who's kind of plodding along, right, trees growing very, very slowly, you might need to cut through some of their stubbornness in order to get things done. So again, using that destructive energy, how do we cut through something with this metal idea? And so if you think about in your own life, what are those things where maybe you're dealing with someone who's a blowhard or that over-the-top energy, you might want to avoid that, right? Because it's not going to do things for your industriousness. It's not going to do good things for your thriftiness, for your prosperity. And if you've got a situation where you need a decision made, right? You may find this year's energy very effective for giving a nudge to some of that stubbornness, or that slow movingness. So this is really, again, culturally, all of this dates back to, we're talking thousands and thousands of years ago, when these Eastern civilizations were largely agrarian, largely farming, some hunter-gatherers, and there was no quantitative science. There was no chemistry. There was no biology. There was no calculus. There was no machine learning, certainly no data science, none of those fancy things. And so these models that we're talking about here are ways that people thought of based on what they could see around them to try and explain how the world worked and what they thought were effective ways of dealing with specific problems. So this year is such an interesting set of contradictions, right? You have this bright energy, this growth energy, but then you have this decisiveness that can be, in some cases, ruined by too much fire and brightness, and then this spirit animal of the rat or the mouse who's afraid of all these things. In nature, they would be the ones scurrying and hiding away from it. So how do you put this all together? Well, in some ways, it can be a confusing year. There's opportunities for thriftiness, opportunities for prosperity. There's also opportunities to make decisions, and there's opportunities for growth. So when you're looking out at the year and challenges that come your way, be aware of those too bright, too fiery situations. Be aware of stubbornness, that you can use the year's energy to push through, to make those decisions, to pursue that thriftiness. And maybe for this year, you may find that big, challenging confrontation that you need to have, you might not be feeling it. You may need to do it anyway in order to get to that brightness, that prosperity that you're looking for, but it's not going to be fun. So give that some thought. It's a fun thought exercise, these older models for trying to explain how the world works. And I certainly wish you a happy Lunar New Year, if you so observe. If not, happy almost Super Bowl week. And I'll talk to you soon. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments below. Again, this is very off the beaten path here. Leave your questions here. If you have questions that are more related to modern things like data science and AI, please leave them as well. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and the newsletter. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Want help solving your company's data analytics and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.